And now, please welcome APTA President and CEO, Paul Skoutelis.
Well, good morning. Man, I'm pumped up. I look out in this room, it is full. Great music to start us. You know, my penchant, though, for the music is like I'd like to put this away and start dancing, but I guess that's not my role. Okay, so I'll stay to the script here. But again, good morning to all of you. Welcome to Toronto. It is great to host here in Toronto this 2019 Rail Conference. We hadn't been here for many years in terms of an APTA meeting, and certainly we're very happy to be here. And what a great kickoff we've had to this weekend and to this great event. I have to say, congratulations to all of you Torontoans, first of all. The 2019 NBA champion, Toronto Raptors. That's a big deal. The first championship, I understand, in quite a few years. Weren't the Blue Jays the last to win a major championship like that? Now, I know that many of our friends and colleagues in the audience from Northern California have perhaps a different view of that. We're hoping for a different outcome. But you have to say, if you watched any of the games, the Raptors and the Warriors gave us some really memorable moments during the course of that championship series. So, again, congratulations to the Raptors. Well, we're here and we're planning to do some good things for you over these next few days. Many of us were here over the weekend, of course, to not only enjoy the great weather, but the dozens of committee meetings, right, that we participated in, including a board meeting. And, you know, it was remarkable to me as I attended many of the meetings, but then had a chance to pop into several others, just how many people were in attendance. Again, it shows the great interest in the work that we do as an industry. So we're very thankful for that. So if I can stay with the little basketball analogy here, a metaphor, we started off with a big three-pointer last night when we celebrated the winners of this year's International Rail Rodeo. It was a wonderful ceremony for those of you who were here. It culminated 2 really intense days of competition. I can tell you, if you interacted with the Rail Rodeo contestants, you know, when you try and be kind of friendly and outgoing, they're pretty serious. You know, they take their work serious, and you know, we are the beneficiaries of that because they're the ones on the front lines, the operators and the maintenance maintainers and staff who really do a great job and make our service what it is, make us proud to deliver that service each and every day. We had 19 public transit agencies that participated in the Rail Rodeo across North America, and we had a team from the East Japan Railways as well. So our friends from Japan, I just want to shout out to them. You know, they're a really interesting story. They've participated now in several of these rail rodeos, and getting accustomed to how we do our work here in the States and in North America, getting accustomed to all the rules and so forth, they're beginning to make it climb up the ladder, so to speak. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised in the next rodeo or two if they're right up there in the top tier. So again, thanks to them for being here and enjoying this with us. Well, they were awarded last night and recognized as the true champions that they are. As I mentioned, the job of being an operator and having to maintain our fleet of heavy rail vehicles and light rail vehicles and the like is not an easy task. So they're true champions. And again, I want to take a second here to congratulate all of the winners and those who did not necessarily win an award, but really represent the best of the best in their class. So congratulations to them. Now let's recognize our host agency, and TTC is a model organization. First of all, they did a superb job over this weekend hosting the Rail Rodeo, hosting us here. Everywhere we went, the TTC employees were gracious, they were welcoming, smiles, asking how we can be helpful to carry out the activities of this meeting and this conference. And so we're very appreciative of that. That happens only because of good leadership, I would say great leadership. And Rick Leary, the CEO, leads the effort at TTC. He's joined here this morning with Jay Robinson, the Toronto City Councillor and Chair of the TTC Board. So please, let's take a quick moment to thank them and welcome them to the stage, Rick Leary and Jay Robinson.
Thank you, Paul. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. We're so excited here at the TTC to host the 2019 APTA Rail Conference. And I'm really especially proud to have participated in the rodeo over this weekend. This schedule was jam-packed. I got to tell you, it was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. meeting all the different contestants, both operating and maintenance, and seeing how proud they were, right? And that determination and the competitive spirit within them as well. It was amazing. And usually what happens is I'm the one talking to everybody about Toronto, how much I love this city and how vibrant and what it has to offer. And in this case, all right, it was so warm-hearted to hear people coming to me that had spent only 3 days in the city telling me about the city and how much they appreciated it, how much they enjoyed riding the TTC and what they understood the difference it makes to this city. And then what was particularly nice for me was when I started hearing about TTC employees. Because we at the TTC really consider the 15,000 employees at our organization the real asset of our organization. They're the ones that, through miraculous efforts, move 1.7 million customer trips a day, over 500 million customer trips a year. And we account for 85% of all customer trips throughout the entire GTHA. And it was mentioned, so I will bring it up, that the Raptors won the NBTA championship. And just a week ago, the TTC surpassed its one-day record, carrying 2.7 million customers without an event. So thank you very much for that. So with that, I have the honor to introduce you to Chair Robinson of the TTC. Chair.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Aren't we lucky to have a CEO like Rick Larry? So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the opening session of the 2019 APTA conference in Toronto. You've had a great weekend. The rodeo, I'm hearing nothing but great things about, great feedback. I also want to extend not just a warm welcome to all our amazing delegates, but also our mayor is here, John Tory, and he'll speak in a few minutes. Also, the APTA chair, David Stackrow, the APTA president and CEO, Paul Skatelis. So thank you for being here. Also, we have one of our TTC commissioners here, Julie Osborne, in the front row, so welcome, Julie. As you've heard, I'm Jay Robinson. I'm the TTC chair, but also city councillor in Ward 15, Don Valley West. And I have to say, on behalf of the TTC board and Toronto City Council, it's an absolute privilege to welcome such a highly regarded organization as the American Public Transit Association. And of course, this distinguished group of professionals that are here today with us. The TTC is a proud member of APTA, which has been representing the transit industry internationally for more than 100 years. So that's quite a milestone. This year's APTA conference is packed with amazing sessions from skilled and knowledgeable staff. And I think we're going to have a very full, informative, and fun week in Toronto. And please spend lots of money while you're here. I'm looking forward to hearing and sharing valuable insights and experiences with you during this conference. I expect that there'll be some valuable relationships also forged here. The TTC has achieved a great deal in the past several years. Transit investments secured by our board in recent years, supported by City Council, have been monumental. And as Rick indicated last week, we actually accommodated 2.7 million riders in and out of the city that day. People were coming from all over the greater Toronto area and actually, quite frankly, throughout all of Ontario to that event. And the TTC pulled it off. Along with that, on a day-to-day basis, we've generated significant service improvements, such as major reductions in our vehicle short turns, large reductions in subway delay, and major strides in the system becoming more accessible. And of course, last but not least, the opening of a subway extension connecting our riders in the region northwest of us in 2017, the first subway expansion in nearly 20 years. It has been said that Toronto only operates, and I truly believe this, Toronto only operates as well as the TTC. I ride it every day, multiple times, and I think that's a very true statement. We believe that the TTC operates faster and more frequently when the Toronto Transit Commission advocates for transit and pushes a bold agenda to unlock gridlock and keep the city moving. Thank you again for attending, being part of this amazing conference. And at this time, I would now like to introduce Toronto's Mayor, John Tory.
Well,
Jay and Rick and Governor and everybody else from APTA here this morning. First of all, good morning and welcome to Toronto. You've been welcomed a number of times this morning, but I want to add my own words of welcome. Now, there's a couple of things I should take up. This business of the Raptors and people feeling badly about the championship coming to Canada, I think we sort of made up for it because it's my understanding, not that I would want to suggest the judges would take any of this into account, that California won a number of the awards at the Transit Rail Rodeo. So I sort of look at the whole thing and say, I think we're even now. You came to Toronto, the Rail Rodeo was won by Californians, we won the NBA championship, we're even. Has everybody agreed with that? Thank you. We always want to keep people from California happy because they're major trading partners of ours. And I just want you to know, I know most of you that are here are Americans, and you know, our relationship with the United States and our, frankly, our reliance on the United States as our biggest and best friend and biggest and best trading partner is hugely fundamental to the success of this city and of this country. And we have disagreements from time to time, but we're great friends, and I think the United States is the most resilient, innovative country on earth, and that's been of great benefit for us to be next door neighbors. Now, Jay did make mention of the shopping, and she didn't give you full, plain, and true disclosure, and I want to do that. That was the other matter I wanted to take up before just saying a couple of words about transit. We did pass a bylaw recently that allows us to inspect your suitcases at the airport when you're leaving the city. It's an unusual bylaw. There aren't many cities that have it, but I'm just trying to tell you now to avoid an awkward moment at the airport, because it can be awkward when they open your suitcase, find no evidence of shopping, and send you back downtown and you missed your plane. So I would just say, get it done. Avoid those awkward moments at the airport. Get the shopping done before you go to the airport, and things will be much better when you're trying to leave town. But we are sincerely most grateful for the fact that you would choose Toronto. I remember meeting the group last year that was coming, I think, on a bit of an inspection tour to make sure we were up to snuff on that. And you know, like all cities that you represent, we're proud of our city, and it is the fastest growing city in North America. We're having about 70,000 people come here every year, and the challenge for us, as I'm sure is true for many other growing cities that are represented here, is to try to keep up with that. And when Jay mentioned that we had just opened the first subway extension in 20 years, that was part of the problem. It was an occasion for a great celebration, but we had nonetheless gone 20 years during explosive growth in the city without building transit. And we're trying to rectify that now, because as much as we opened that extension, there's now about $30 billion worth of transit that is in various stages of approval and construction, in fact, even more than that. And it really just is trying to do what cities should always be trying to do, which is to have the transit accompany the growth as opposed to follow it decades later, because we've been blessed, and we've been blessed in part because people the world over are choosing to come here. Most of the growth of that 70,000 people is coming from immigration. And we certainly have found in this city and in this country, this city, 51% of the people who live here, out of the millions who live here, were born outside of the country. So if you want to ask if we believe in immigration and the positive blessings that it's brought to the city and all of the growth and success we've had, yes, we do. And we will continue to going forward. But that has been... And it's helped us to attract, you know, the best and the brightest, whether it's from film or finance or life sciences or technology, and that's really been, it's been instrumental to the growth of the city, but as has the transit system. And the transit system, if there was a fault to be found with it, it's that it wasn't growing fast enough, not that it wasn't well operated. And I want to just take a second to pay tribute to Rick Leary and his team. He has an outstanding team. When I say team, I'm not talking about the executive team, they're great, but I'm talking about the entire team of the 15,000 people who day in and day out provide that service that he made reference to our city. And you know, I had a lot of things to worry about. I mean, it was a happy day on Monday, obviously, when we were having the parade to celebrate the success of the Raptors. But you know, as those of you who will know, because you all are people who operate transit systems, you're still in the back of your head worrying about something going wrong. And to have a day when we told people, and I was on TV for days before the parade saying, do not bring your car, please take public transit. And as you're saying that, it's not because you're worried, you're just worried if something goes wrong that, you know, those words will come back to haunt you. But imagine that they moved 2.7 million people, an all-time record. In fact, the second record was held on a day when the Pope was here sometime many years ago, and it was not even close. This was an all-time record by a long margin, 70% more than a normal day. And it was done competently honestly, it was done professionally. I was in the transit system, and while it was crowded, there were lots of people there, as was the case with Pride yesterday. I hope some of you got a chance to go and see the Pride Parade. But again, you could travel, as I did yesterday on the TTC, under where the parade was, where there was 1 million people watching, and it was crowded but seamless. People were just using transit as they should. May I just say to you that I hope that the time here is spent productively. I know there are many important things you're going to discuss, which are challenges shared by all of us in common. I don't just look at transit as something that is to be built to accommodate growth, or that is to be operated well in order to make sure people can go about their business. I think that it is something that connects people to opportunity. In fact, I think that's the real reason you build transit. You know, right now, if you look at the plans that we have going forward, the lines and the different projects we're building are all things that are going to connect isolated neighborhoods to opportunity. For people who live in this city, and I know it's true in many of the other cities in North America because I talked to the other mayors, you know, one of the problems that's confronting people who live in more marginalized communities is that there may be booming opportunity happening right around here where we are downtown in Toronto, but for a lot of the people who live in some of the inner suburbs, that opportunity seems as far away as the moon sometimes because of a lack of connection, a physical lack of connection for them in order to get to that opportunity. So it's important from that standpoint, and of course, it's also important because as many of you face in your cities as well, and we're taking this very seriously up here, if we are going to confront the challenge of climate change, and if we're going to confront the challenge of reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that the problem doesn't get worse and hopefully starts to get better, the number one thing we can do is to get cars off the road, and the only way we're going to do that is to convince people that there is transit there that is convenient, accessible, and affordable for them, and that is the job we all collectively have to do, and it's a job that we share in common because of the challenge that climate change presents not just to Canada or to Toronto, but to every single human being on the earth. And so that is why it's important for us to get this transit built. And the final thing I'll say, and I know that you're spending quite a bit of time dealing with this at the conference, is that certainly I've only had this job for 4 years, but I came from business, and I understand in business you wouldn't think of not collaborating. You wouldn't think of getting everybody you possibly could to come to the table to accomplish an objective. And I know you're going to spend quite a lot of time talking about that, and it's a challenge we have here. Whether it's collaboration between governments, which right now is an issue that we're dealing with, whether it's collaboration involving the private sector, whether it's collaboration with the tech sector to make sure we maximize the use of technology in the delivery of transit services, these are all examples of collaboration that is not just desirable, but necessary if we're going to move forward and make sure we can deliver for the people that we all serve in big cities, which themselves, as you know, are complex beings. So I wish you well in the days ahead in your conference, and I thank you again for coming to Toronto. I thank the executives of this organization for coming to Toronto. I hope we can deliver a good time for you as well as a good conference, and please don't forget about avoiding those awkward moments at the airport. Thank you very much.
Mayor, we thank you. Beautiful country, beautiful city. And I want to assure you that we at APTA love Canada and we love coming here. So we'll be back at one day, sometime soon, I'm sure. And I also want to pick up on something you mentioned about the inspection tour. You know, we were here just 11 months ago. We led a study mission here in Canada with 30 of our members, half of which were business members, the other half public agency members. And we went to Montreal, we went to Ottawa, we came here to Toronto, you graciously welcomed us here, and we went on to Vancouver. And the reason for that is we wanted to understand what Canada was doing relative to public transport, how it financed projects, how it conceived the planning of projects, how it delivered those. Because we have a very strong sense at APTA in particular that not one idea is relegated to a particular city or country, that we've got to get out and look beyond our borders to see what is happening. And we learned quite a bit in that week that we spent throughout Canada. So it was an uplifting experience from our members. And as a result of that, they said, we need to go and do additional study missions. And so just a week ago or so, we completed a study mission in Europe. And we went to Vienna, to Hamburg, to Helsinki, and to Stockholm. And our purpose there was a little bit different. It was this whole notion of what I'm sure you've heard of, mobility as a service, something referred to as MaaS. And everybody's struggling with what is the exact definition of MaaS. But the way I describe it is that it's the entire umbrella that encompasses all of public transport, all of the various modes and services that we provide, but with an eye towards the changing nature of technology and what it means in terms of having at our fingertips all transportation options available to us. And I will say we learned an awful lot about the fact that, again, as the cities we visited, much like here in Toronto, you're not complacent. You've got a well-integrated public transport system. You're not saying that's enough. You're looking to make it better. And in Europe, what we found was high ridership levels across the board in each of these cities, well-developed, well-integrated systems that, quite frankly, we would be very proud of in the States. But yet they're saying that's not quite enough. We've got to do more. We've got to look for ways to meet the needs of our clients, our customers every day. So that's what we did. And it was a great experience. And again, we thank you for the hospitality that you've shown us here. So what we've also learned is, you know, one major takeaway is that no matter what the system may look like, they're all a little bit different. Some are more heavy rail-based, others tram and trolley and light rail, others mostly bus-based. They all may look a little bit different. The operations are different. But what public transportation leaders around the world are focused on are really two of the same priorities. First, increased greater investment in public transport, expanding services, looking to new technology, adapting to the needs of safety and security, and what's critically important in most of our large cities and legacy systems, as we refer to, and I think it applies here in Toronto, is state of good repair. What it means to us in the States is making sure that we're bringing aging infrastructure up to a quality level so that we can make sure we provide daily, reliable service. Carrying 2.7 million riders in that one day says a lot. That's where we need to be as an industry. And then to add to that, the additional investment to expand our systems. Seeing investment, seeing innovation across the U.S. and North America is what we're witnessing every day. And part of our job at APTA is to highlight the great examples, great successes that each of you in your own locales are doing. A few statistics for you. By the end of last year, every U.S. commuter railroad met the statutory milestones for what's referred to as positive train control. It really is another safety layer to make our commuter rail systems as safe as they can be. We're now working to meet the absolute deadline of the end of 2020 to make sure that they're fully operational. As you can imagine, it's very complicated. You've got commuter railroads operating in mixed traffic with freights. It is not the easiest of undertakings, but our railroads are on target to do just that. Many of our systems are installing inward and outward facing cameras to make sure that they're observing the environment and making adjustments as appropriate. They're designing new ways to address grade crossing incidents, and that's a big issue for the commuter railroads, in particular in the U.S. Building and strengthening safety cultures, which is important to every agency. At the end of the day, what people judge us by is the safety of our service and how secure that service is, and that's a big emphasis area. Cutting-edge technology, like unattended monitoring equipment, is being employed to check track geometry without exposing inspectors and maintenance crews to the right-of-way risks. Critically important. In urban areas as diverse as New York City, as Dallas, and Portland, we're seeing greater integration of modes and mobility services, much like what we observed in Europe. Ticketless fare collection systems, downloading of apps, real-time information, it's all being embraced by public transit agencies, both large and small, really all across the globe, and certainly in the US and here in North America. We also can't overlook the critical state of what I refer to as the state of good repair work that's underway at many of our legacy systems, like New York, like Washington, D.C., like in Boston. And what we've seen there is great transit networks that are challenged because of aging infrastructure and the need to play catch-up to continue their vital services and the reliability. So it's a great deal of work that we have to do as an industry. But we should also take great pride in the progress that's being made to modernize some of these older systems and, most importantly, the infrastructure. Because we know that not doing so has really profound impacts, not being able to move those millions of riders every day. But there's also some really good news to talk about. Over the past year, we've seen ridership on commuter rail increasing. We also saw higher passenger numbers posted on heavy rail at SEPTA, as an example, and on light rail in Denver, and in Minneapolis, and in New Jersey Transit. And in Seattle, both the King County Metro and Sound Transit systems experienced ridership growth. In the last 25 years, 43 new rail systems or line extensions opened in the US, and overall rail ridership increased by more than 80%. In fact, in just the last 5 years alone, more than 45 projects have been launched, including 12 new systems and almost 200 miles of track extensions in places like Fort Worth, Texas, Tacoma, Washington, Cincinnati, Ohio. The public gets it. They really do get it. They understand by doing so, they're voting all across the country in the US, voting on ballot measures to raise their own taxes to make investments in public transport. And what we're seeing is expansion of both bus and certainly of rail systems. All of this makes our work to secure the needed federal support for our industry that much more critical. And for the past 2 years, I'm very proud to say that as an industry, we've come together and we've had success in winning record levels of funding from Congress in the last 2 fiscal appropriations. And we're working hard to make sure that that trend continues going forward. Our future as the backbone of the new mobility is riding on the passage of a new and bigger FAST Act, the reauthorization of the Highway Trust Fund in the FAST Act, which is critical for us, which expires in September of 2020. From Capitol Hill to cities and towns across the country, there's a growing realization that public transit is the necessary linkage for an integrated multimodal network, but more importantly, a multimodal lifestyle. I live in Washington with my wife. I don't own a car. I rely on the bus every day. I take Metro everywhere I can. I fill in an occasional taxi cab and maybe an Uber, but that's the lifestyle. So that is growing in importance as we provide real good options for our citizens. From Capitol Hill to cities across the country, there's a growing realization that, again, public transit is that key ingredient. We are innovating and we're innovating how we operate public transit. We're investing in our industry, both with public and private funding, and innovation and investment. These are the 2 factors that are proof that our public transportation industry has indeed a bright and important future. So when we gather for our next Rail Conference, and we displayed it last evening with a little show from San Francisco, we're going to be in the Bay Area next year to have this Rail Conference. I know that we will see changes that have occurred in our environment as disruption continues to occur. But I also know that we'll have many more achievements to report as to what our industry has achieved. So we can be proud of that. We've got much to look forward to. We've got a very promising future in public transit, but we need to work together as a close-knit association to make that happen. So I thank you. Let's look forward to a great 3 days. And now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you a gentleman who is leading the way as our APTA chair. He is leading the next chapter of our strategic plan, and we're developing that for conclusion at the end of this year. I'm very pleased to welcome Dave Stackrow. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Paul, and it wouldn't be very polite of me if I didn't also wish you all a good morning. Over the past year, we've heard a great deal about the new mobility future that we need to create and own. Paul just summarized some of the advances in rail, And there is good reason to be optimistic about our future. Just take a look at the most recent issue of Passenger Transport here at the conference. You'll see stories about Oklahoma City investing almost $800 million through P3 projects. Miami-Dade launching an open payment fare program using bank-issued cards. Maryland Transit Administration efforts to deliver timely information to its customers on multiple platforms simultaneously. New Jersey Transit's 58 powered rail cars that are more cost-efficient and provide more seating for their customers. And in my region of the world, the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority expanding service in Buffalo, New York. Need more proof that the future looks bright? Last night's awards ceremony at the International Rail Rodeo showcased just how skilled, quick, and innovative our rail operators and maintainers need to be. The problem-solving skills of our workforce are clearly keeping pace with complex emerging technologies, diverse customer preferences, and increasing safety and security requirements. And speaking of safety and security, tomorrow you'll meet the people and agencies that have earned awards of excellence in both of these areas. As Paul said earlier, we know communities want more rail because rail is a catalyst for economic growth and a magnet for jobs and opportunities. Examples of successful transit-oriented development are everywhere, from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., to Minneapolis and Atlanta, from Jacksonville to Chicago. And TOD projects are being planned in at least a dozen other communities. It's all about leveraging the greatest value from public transportation investments, and creating greater value is at the heart of the new integrated mobility. There's a great deal of excitement about that new world, and there should be. But getting everyone to that place as an industry requires a plan, because a goal without a plan is nothing more than a wish. The Strategic Plan Steering Committee, which I chair, has been working for several months to develop a 3-year strategic plan for APTA. We've done a lot of listening, and we've had many lively discussions with our members, our stakeholders, and our staff. After all, successful strategic planning is about the collective wisdom of an organization. After all, based on all we've heard, we concluded that a single declaration of why we exist would help guide the new strategic plan. As a result, the APTA board has approved the following purpose statement. APTA leads public transportation in a new mobility era, advocating to connect and build thriving communities. Every word of this new purpose statement has a precise meaning. We lead by being the voice of public transportation. We support the needs of transit agencies. We anticipate, prepare for, and understand the changes that are shaping the new mobility era. We advocate for public transportation's interests, and we champion our members' efforts to improve the quality of life in their communities. This purpose statement has helped us to identify 4 strategic priorities: securing and growing public transportation funding and resources, attracting and maintaining a skilled workforce, ensuring safe, secure, and resilient public transit systems, and leading and managing the changing mobility ecosystem. Now we're looking for ways to leverage our best tools and assets to address these priorities. All of this is designed to provide a useful roadmap that brings greater clarity, direction, and focus to what APTA does, and helps our members to be more successful. When we meet in New York City in mid-October for APTA's Transform Conference, which is what we're calling our reimagined annual meeting, we'll unveil a final strategic plan, including measurable goals and milestones. Let me emphasize this point. APTA's 3-year strategic plan will have importance and lasting value for the entire public transit sector. Regardless of where any of us sit, we are one industry. We learn from each other's experiences, we are shaped by the same external forces, and we are becoming more vital to the communities that we serve. Public transportation has an exciting future, inspired by the work of members like you and guided by a new strategic plan for success. Thank you all for everything that you do. You make us proud, and thank you for being here in Toronto this week for the 2019 Rail Conference.